they are. So you do a live. Now I'm live on YouTube. So you do a live and you do courses and you do this and you do that to try and meet your public um, where they are. So that was just a side note because someone came into the shop. If y'all don't know, we have a shop, a brick and mortar shop in Decatur, Georgia, and yeah. And so our YouTube live is back up. And if someone could pop in the chat and let me know if y'all can hear us. I don't know why we had the same problem last week. I'm not entirely sure why we have that problem, but if someone can let me know if you can hear us, and that would be great. So anyway, getting back to our story. So where did we leave off, IG? We left off that we started seeing results. Salima wanted to start a business, which is pretty on brand for Salima. As she was alluding to, or perhaps she said it outright, she was always trying to take a a talent of mine or a skill of mine and turn it into a business. And so Salima is extremely entrepreneurial. I don't know if I would say the same about myself, but I keep doing this, so evidently there's something about it that I enjoy. And so we she's always trying to do it. She did it on multiple things, but for this one, she really dug in. She really dug in, and she said, "No, this is going to be a business." And so we took courses. Hold on. So we took courses, herbalism courses under Karen Rose in Sacred Vibes Apothecary in Brooklyn. I knew pretty early on that I didn't. Ah, great, it's working. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I knew very early on that I didn't want to see clients. But Salima was unsure. And while we were going through our apprenticeship, we had already had our business. I have to think for a second, so bear with me. Going back a few years now, we were already in business. We were already in stores. We were in full steam ahead, and we were transitioning our life. So here's something that you all might find helpful. So while we were doing our apprenticeship, we both still worked a 9-to-5 job. So I worked 9 to 5, Salima worked a 9 to 5. But the time the apprenticeship started, there was no way the apprenticeship was in Brooklyn. I worked in Manhattan. There was no way that I could get back to Brooklyn from Manhattan with a traditional 9 to 5 schedule for the time the class started. And so this was probably like really the first time that I had to make a big decision around if this is a path that I really want to explore, because I had to go in and talk to my manager at the time and ask for special hours to be able to leave early enough that I could get on the train, get to Brooklyn in time for this class. And so for all of y'all that don't know, my background is in IT. So at the time, I was a Salesforce developer, and IT is quite stressful, as most positions are, but you don't usually get like a whole lot of flexibility. It kind of feels like you're on call like all the time, like a doctor. And so it was a pretty big deal to, one, go in and ask for this, because I'm essentially asking to come in at like 8 and leave at 3 or 4. I think it was leave at 4. And I also had to communicate why, right? So this is the first time that I'm saying to my employer, I'm leaving. I want to leave early because there's this class I want to take, and it has nothing to do with my career. It is not going to help you, my employer, in any way. It's only going to help me. And so that was a big step for me. And I went in and I did it. I had a great manager at the time who was like, absolutely, 100%. And so that was the first step for me on cultivating this new life and figuring out what I want to do. And so we went through the apprenticeship. We started our business. We started with body care. We started with deodorant when natural deodorant wasn't super popular. Steve is back. Hey!
Yay!
The live is up. Everyone is bearing with our technical difficulties and our clients, which we appreciate.
Yeah.
Just to catch you up where we are in the story, I was explaining how, for me, the first step was I had to go in and talk to Paul about wanting to leave early in order to even get to the apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And that was a big step. We also touched on how you were always trying to
turn everything
into a business.
Yeah.
Always trying to find like some skill that I had, and we're like, oh, we'll make that a business. We'll make that a business. And this was the first time that it really, I don't want to say it really stuck, but you were pretty adamant about, and we both went forward in it. So we've done our apprenticeship. Again, I knew pretty early on that I didn't want to see clients. Salima, by the time we hit level 3, I think you knew you wanted to see clients.
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah.
And so now you're
maybe. Yeah.
Right. But now we're kind of at the point where we have knowledge, great, but
we had our business. So we had started you said that too.
I did.
Like we started our business before we signed up for our apprenticeship program. And so we had a validated offer. We had a validated product. And I think that's one key kind of insight and tip and recommendation is that before you think about leaping, it's like, I'm going to quit, make sure that you have your offer. That's your product, your service, your solution, and you actually have customers already. So that's what I mean by saying like it's a validated offer. You have something and people are actually willing to pay for it. And it's not just ideas in your head yet, because that's not readiness.
Right.
Even though you might be wanting to quit because you are not satisfied or fulfilled with what you're doing, that's not enough. Validate your offer.
Right. But I had a thought. That's why I was have to write things down, because I forgot what my thought is. Go ahead.
And then the other piece that I know I wanted to mention, because we talked about this inside of Herbal Medicine for the Soul when we did this class, was being pushed versus leaping, and like the energy with which you go into your own endeavor, kind of like making sure that you are leaving with the right mindset, like in the right frame of mind, that you're not leaving because you want to escape, but that you're leaving because this is something that is pulling you. You're not trying to get fired. You might be really dissatisfied. And I think that some of that dissatisfaction is a part of like the process of realizing that maybe this isn't for you. But if you leave with anger, with dissatisfaction, with high levels of frustration, and that's kind of the impetus to be like, well, I'm just going to do my own thing, you're going to go into your new endeavor with that same energy. So you kind of have to separate like why you're leaving, you're going toward, and you're not escaping from. That makes sense.
It does. Yeah, because I had that. But I would also say that there hits a point. So when Salima and I both left our 9-to-5s, I feel like it was a very different type of exit. So Salima used to work in the arts, and I can't remember what job you were at, but you hated it. You absolutely hated that job. I think you came home and cried like almost every night.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
She hated that job, right? And so this is kind of piggybacking off of leaving and not escaping. So I remember you came home and you're like, I'm quitting my job. I'm pretty sure the little bit of color I have left my face. And
but we had been talking about it.
But it's very different. It's very different when you're talking about it or when your partner comes home and you can tell by their mannerisms, their energy that this is happening. And so she was like, I'm leaving, which meant we were turning into a 1-income household from a 2-income household. And she was going to do the business full time. Now, yes, we had a validated offer, but a validated offer does not necessarily equate to livable wages. Okay, so let's just be really clear about that. That is great that we were in stores and we had things that people would buy, but the business was not at a point in which it could sustain us. And we had no kid at the time. Our bills were pretty low at the time, but those aren't equal. So that's why
that was like
my face.
But that was like the hustle, right? That it's just like we can lean and conserve our resources to be on one income, and let's see like how much I can build this into.
Right.
So it was knowing like not leaving and thinking like, oh, people are just gonna come and they're gonna find us. But it's like, no, all of that energy that I was doing to work for somebody else, now my 9 to 5 became Iwilla Remedy. And what do I need to do to generate to replace the income that we just eliminated?
Right. And I full transparency, I'm gonna say
it did for a while. But didn't. And we thought, so we had a lot of discussions too, where we like, okay, we knew how much we had in savings. We knew like, okay, once we get to this number, and the number back then, it was like, once our account goes below 5,000, then we have to talk, and we have to talk about me going back to work.
Let me tell you something, y'all. That just goes out the window. And I don't know if it's just us, and y'all can chime in.
Bunch of baloney.
And let me know if in the chats, if this is the truth for you. We set these numbers.
It's like you have a plan, but then
you have a plan.
Spirit has a plan.
Okay. We set these numbers, and we're saying we're not going to go below this number. Once we hit this number, we have to come back to the table. We have to have a conversation. Let me tell you something. I'm pretty sure our bank account got down to $10. That 5,000 came and went, and I'm pretty sure we got down to about $10. And I also, it's funny, I remember because I was hella stressed. And I remember we went out to dinner with my godfather, and he looked at us. He's like, "You two look great." And I'm like, "We do?" I was like, "How do we look great?" I am so stressed. I am insanely stressed about money, about business, about understanding what the hell are we doing, and why it was so much work. It was so much work. And again, we're gonna keep this so honest for y'all, because I don't think we do any disservice of trying to make entrepreneurship sound glamorous. It is, I wouldn't say it is glamorous. You learn what you're made of quite quickly. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what I don't know if I would do this with it. I wouldn't do this with anyone else other than Salima. But anyway, getting back to the story. Salima left her job. She came home one day and informed me that she was leaving. I'm pretty sure the next day. Informed. Okay. Well, we had discussed it.
Say, like, we have been discussing this for a long time. So she's putting dubs on it. It wasn't an informed. It was like, now's the time to actually execute on what we said. And so we've been talking about. And it was January. I was like, oh, it's around this season. We do a lot in January. Make a lot of decisions in January.
Fantastic.
But it was January of 2013.
And I will say, Salima went out and she hustled.
I hit the ground.
Door to door.
Door to door.
Salima
literally.
She had a sample kit of every product that we had. And here's side note. Here's another side note. If you're starting a product line, don't start with too many products.
We started with a lot of
products. If I had to do it again, I wouldn't do that. Mm-hmm. And I would suggest to anybody else starting with a product line to not launch your line with tons of products. Anyway, back to the story. She hit the ground running.
Literally. Go ahead.
I was amazed. She would call me at work and she'd be like, "I got us into a store." I'm like, "What?" It's your first store. You're so excited. You're like, holy shit. It was amazing. And she just kept going, and she'd go and she would chat and she would talk. Like,
I didn't have time to experience, like, I was nervous, but because we just made this decision, it was like, there's no time to wallow in these nerves or in this fear. And we're in one of the most convenient kind of cities to be able to do door to door, where it was literally, I would pick a neighborhood, pick that subway stop, because we lived in Brooklyn, and just walk the streets, walk the streets with my kit, go into the bodegas, go into the health food stores, go into some of the markets, the independent and some of the bigger ones, and just even having those conversations, because Prosper, why are you out? Every conversation was not a yes, but you would also learn things, and people would tell you when to come back. Like, who do I need to talk to in order, like, who makes this decision inside of the store? Who do I need to talk to? When are they going to be here? Really, like, I had the kit of our products and paper and notes, like, so that I could keep up with these things and know, like, oh, the manager is going to be back on this date. Call or show up on this date, or redo this neighborhood again on this date. But we learned a lot doing that, and the offer, like, it continued to get validated. So that builds your confidence. I think that there's a lot to be said about that when it comes to, like, having the faith to continue even when the income, it hasn't matched up yet. But that is why, like, I couldn't, when we got to that, well, here our bank account is now below. And I'm not going back, because we didn't have that feeling. Like, we did not deeply feel like going back to work, going back to the arts was the solution. So it was like, you hold on to your belief and to your faith. And I think lots of entrepreneurs have this experience, but you don't often hear this part of the story. Especially if it just depends, like, people, like, skip steps in the story of how they're telling how they became big. But I liked that ad, right? That it's like, it happens overnight. Like,
an overnight success is 10 years.
It takes 10 years. And it's like, yeah, it does.
It does. But
Like,
we did tell this a little out of
order.
order. So when we talked about our bank account, like, when it got to $5,000, at that point, we both were doing this full time.
Right.
We did leave that part out. Well, we didn't leave it out. We just forgot that there hit a point where we said, okay, we're going to leave. Selima had already left her job. And I was like, I'm going to leave my job. And so I left.
And I think that's the difference.
Put the push versus leave.
Yeah. How I left versus how you left.
I can't remember. I mean, I've done this three times.
I don't know.
2 or 3 times. I've gone back to a 9 to 5. So this was the first time Selima has never gone back. I've gone back. The first time I left, I don't think I was pushed. Like, I wasn't losing my job, but I was ready to go. There was definitely something, getting to see Selima get up every day and the freedom that she had in her time and space, even though it was like a lot of hustle to go out and do. And there was something inside of me that I'm like, I want to do that too. And so I gave my notice, and that's when we said, when the bank account gets to $5,000, we have to come back and have a serious conversation.
That happened.
Yeah, we kept going. Like, no one went back at that point. The bank account got way below $5,000, and we kept going. And we were in, we were making money. Yeah. It's not like we weren't making money. We were making money, but we weren't making the money we were making before.
Yeah,
this was easily a 75% income cut. We're definitely making maybe about a quarter of what we were making before.
Living lean.
What'd you say?
Living lean.
We were living so lean, but we were really happy, which was super interesting. We were really happy. We were living super lean. And I remember I did a map of all the stores we were in. And at that time, we were in stores all across the United States. So you can look at the map, and we're on the West Coast. We were a little in the Midwest. It was really, and it's still that kind of like that now in terms of our reach. It's really like the East and the West Coast. I think we had a little bit in Canada.
But this was the days of cold calling. So once I stopped running the streets of New York, walking the streets of New York, I had emails. I had email templates that I had. So I would send those out, pick up the phone and call. People started reaching out to us. We
got some publicity. We hired a publicist.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Well, we shouldn't say don't do that. That would be another live. But we had a publicist, which put
in
us
front of
people, but you learn quickly that if it's not the right kind of I don't know if it's the right kind of publicist, but you just see a bump. It's just a bump. There wasn't like longevity.
This
is absolutely the long game. So we'll fast forward. We did that for a year. We did that for a year. And then Salima came home and
the next January
and said the next January and said, I want to get pregnant. And I, again, complete color left my face,
dubs,
position.
Putting dubs on it because we had been having conversations about it. And she had been having dreams about who we now know as Niles.
Yes.
So don't skip that part.
We won't skip that part. But she came home and said she wanted to get pregnant.
Yeah.
Now, again, told you, bank account real low. And so this was, that's right, it is 3 times. So this is the first time. So I left my job. So now I'm going to go back because I'm like, if we're going to have a kid, we're going to need more money.
But this landed in your lap.
Whether it landed in my lap or not is irrelevant.
I don't think that is irrelevant.
This isn't the able, this is the consulting.
Oh, Esper?
So I did consulting. So I did Salesforce consulting in order to, for some income. And so I did that until Niles was born. And I didn't mind it. It was, again, you do what you have to do, right? And so the reason that it worked was because it was consulting and I could do it from anywhere. As long as I had an internet connection and a laptop, I could work from anywhere. And I did. So I could still do what I did for our business and, bring in some extra money. And that I'm trying to think at that time, again, it was still, at that time, we had also started talking to some investors because we were trying to decide if that was a route that we wanted to take. We had won a business plan competition, so that gave us a little cash influx, so that helped. And it was really a time of trying to figure out what do we want to do in this business? Because at this time, after speaking with investors, again, at this time, just to recap, at this time, we're only doing body care. We didn't do anything ingestible. We're only doing body care. And we are meeting with investors for body care. And it became apparent very, very quickly that in order to scale, the ingredients had to change.
Back then.
And that wasn't something that we were interested in. So just to give you a little bit of context, at this time, this entire time, we are making all of our products in our 700 square foot Brooklyn apartment. Everything was made in that apartment.
But we had the partnership with Brooklyn Community Services, which is an organization in Brooklyn that helped us with our packaging and our shipping and order fulfillment.
Right. So the way we had it set up was we would make all the products and then we would bring them to BachNet,
BCS.
BachNet was something else. BCS, which employed differently abled individuals. And they would finish the packaging process of putting labels on and batch numbers and stuff. And then when orders came in, they would package it up and they would ship it out. So that was one partnership, and that was one way of scaling. Another, we were on Amazon for a little bit. That's never really worked super well for us, but we had that. And so I just wanted to give you context of how are we making these products? Where was this done? This was all done in-house by these hands, by those hands.
And our interns at the time too.
And then we partnered with a high school, and we had 2 or 3 interns that came to our house, to our Brooklyn apartment, to help make the products or whatever it was, like, make the products and get them to BCS. We used to do markets. We used to do events. Every weekend we had a little Honda at the time, and it was packing that Honda up. You had the tent, you had the table, you had the whole thing. It was packing that up
and your products
every single weekend, driving to the place, putting it all up, talking to people. Like, that was every single weekend. And so that's what we did for over a year, in addition to like hustling and getting into stores, and me, Salima not going back, me straddling the fence, doing sales force development consulting work, and still running the business side. And then we'll fast forward to 2014, and Salima says, I want to get pregnant. Full disclosure, it's not like I didn't want to have a child. I too wanted to have a child.
We were just lying to ourselves, thinking that we were going to find a kid on the subway.
We did. And I'm going to tell you why, because whenever we tell that story, people are like, why would you ever think that?
Well, there was an article.
Because there was a New York Times article that came out not too long prior to this, and it was about a family who
they found a
child on the subway, and this was like the story was 16 years later, like where they are today. And so we were like, it's possible. Anyway, we were deluding ourselves.
Right.
So Salima gets pregnant in May of 2014. And so we're still working, but she had I don't want to say a rough trimester, but she was crazy nauseous. And so the level of involvement into the business was not the same. And then when Niles came, it was a complete stop.
But we were also, or just like gradually tapered off, because like I want to give context for this part too. Like, yes, we were kind of working towards the business less, but in that first year of really approaching stores and and doing the markets, we had gotten exhausted by that. And being tied to our kitchen, we soon realized that this wasn't the model that we wanted to continue with. And that's when we had the things like, oh, we're in manufacturing. like we wanted to, or I wanted to be an herbalist. I did not want to be a manufacturer. And if we're going to scale a product line business, that is manufacturing. And our next step from our apartment was to contract manufacturing, or a
space. Remember, we looked at spaces,
but it was really thinking about like, is this the business model that we want? And we had already been like, no, this isn't really the business model but we didn't have clarity yet on what we really wanted to do. And so that's where we just kind of let things gradually taper off and didn't put as much energy and effort into the business while we were getting pregnant and having a baby. And that clarity really kind of came, and then we moved. That clarity came more so when we moved and we were settled in Atlanta. It's like I knew we weren't giving up our business, but we didn't know what that next page or what that next chapter was until we had Niles and we were settled in our new home in Atlanta. And it's like, because we were still doing somebody care, I was still doing consultations every now and then. I was still formulating and still like in like being an herbalist. It just wasn't as outward facing. And if people had, asked for stuff, it's like, yeah, we have it, we'll ship it. But we just kind of let it gradually taper off. And that's, once we had Niles, then I had more clarity and had more like energy.
Well, I would say once you had so this is the third time I went back. So I stopped consulting because now the business is kind of tapering off and we're about to have a kid. We need an income. So I went back to the 9 to 5 and, no, because at that time, Salima had thought she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom.
Oh my God.
That's where we were at. That we done the business thing. It is what it is. I want to be a stay-at-home mom. I went back to a 9 to 5, and I for probably for like a week.
That was 2 weeks. Okay.
2 weeks. Salima was like, this is what we're gonna do. That was short-lived. She's like, I am not a stay-at-home mom. I can't do this. And so that's when you started, when you had that realization, that's when you started more formulation. You really started diving into your craft to figure out, how do I want to show up in this work? And so, and even still, so that was the thought process, but we weren't really forward facing again, not like we were prior. This was a very internal time. This was postpartum.
Yeah.
There's a lot that happens postpartum. So it was very internal. She was doing a lot of medicine making just for the home, just for us, just for Niles. And
still studying.
Still studying. And during that time, we moved. So we moved from Brooklyn to Atlanta. And then there was a period of, adjustment. It's a big move, figuring out what that is. And so this is when Salima starts trying on a lot of different hats to try and figure out where am I going to fit into this work? Your eyes look like you don't know what I'm talking about.
What are you talking
I was
about?
like, how? Okay, so this is the time. So we had to give a quick recap.
We are talking about, for IG, we are talking about, when is it time to make the leap into your herbal business full time? So we're still kind of like telling our story and the decisions that we made along the way. And if you're on IG, pop onto YouTube, because this is where we can moderate the chat and answer your specific questions.
Yes. So to recap for everyone, we started with body care. Salima
she went all the way back to the beginning.
Well, it's gonna be quick. We started with body care. Salima left her job. She hustled. We were in stores
doing markets. You quit.
I quit. I went back.
Her job.
I quit. I went back. We got pregnant.
We
moved. You're all caught up. So when you're trying to figure, I don't know if this is for everybody. This is for us, that you're trying to figure out where you fit in this work and how you want to show up. I said early on, I didn't really have any desire to see clients. Salima, she thought she did. We quickly realized with our body care, we were in manufacturing. That didn't really that didn't feel right. Well, first, we didn't realize we were manufacturing. Then when we realized we were in manufacturing and what that really meant, we then learned, well, that's not really the route that we want to take either. So then we moved to Atlanta, and
the thing about being in stores is that you were always chasing your checks. You were always chasing the checks. They don't want to pay out. They want discounts. They want what's the new product? What's the next product? What discount? And when can you do demo days? Stores want a lot of work, and
they want a lot of discounts.
And they don't want to pay you on time.
Right. So I apologize if we're jumping around a lot. We're trying to remember this. But I do. So that is a good point, because I remember that we were working to get into Whole Foods.
Yep.
And at the time we got this opportunity to do Dreamweavers. Is that what it's called? Dreamweavers? Dream Builders. Sorry, Dreamweaver was a web application. Dream Builders. It was great. We got flown out to Arizona, and we got to tell our story to the people that shoot for TEDx talks. Mm-hmm. And it was a bunch of female business owners, and we were talking to them, and there was someone that was in Whole Foods. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking to them and being like, yeah, we're working towards getting that. And she was like, I would highly suggest you not do that. Yeah. She was like, because she was in Whole Foods, and she was
She won't
like,
make any money.
I make no
Yeah.
money. She's like, at the end of the day, it's a marketing line item.
Yep.
And that was
illuminating.
It was. And it again showed you, because the level of output that you have to do to be in these stores to keep up is
it's tremendous.
A lot.
It's tremendous.
And it doesn't mean it's not for everybody. It doesn't mean that you can't be in Whole Foods and be highly successful. I think it's about what you want and understanding what you want and understanding if that is the type of business that you want to be in. It was really illuminating for us because we realized quite quickly that is not the type of business that we want to be in. And so I remember we came back from Arizona and it was kind of like this, what now?
What are we gonna do?
What that question of what now? It's we tried this, it's not that. We tried this, it's not that. So what could it? What is it? And
when you don't know, that's when you get quiet.
And that's when Salima said she wanted to get pregnant, and we conveniently.
Salima said she wanted to get
pregnant. It was your body. Anyway, so we got pregnant. That's when we went quiet, and we fast forward. We're in Atlanta. Iwilla isn't really doing a whole lot. And Salima was trying on different hats of
like, where's she going?
How do I want? Well, because she used to do classes in our backyard for kids. So she was like, oh, maybe I want to teach kids. So she would try that. Then she said, oh, people are always asking us about our relationship. But like, oh my gosh, you're married, you work together. How do you do that? We get asked that question all the time. Maybe we're relationship. What did you call us?
We were relationship coaches.
We were relationship
made a
coaches.
whole course. It's good.
Salima made a whole course. She made me record in that course. She was like, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. I'm like, okay, I don't think that we're this, but I remember we went out once and she introduced us as that. She's like, we're relationship coaches. And I was like, we are? I'm like, I don't think we are. I don't know if you should introduce us in that way because I don't think that we.
You got to try it on. That's what you were saying. You got to try it on. It didn't feel right.
You try it on, you take it off. But anyway.
But our course is the bomb. Our relationship course is the bomb. So if you want it, we can offer it for free.
No, we wouldn't offer. We'd have to re-record it. We recorded that so many years ago. Anyway, the point of this story is that you try on a lot of things. And so during this time, Salima's trying on a lot of things, and I'm working a 9 to 5, and we're trying to figure out, 1, do we want our business? 2, in how? Like, how do we want to show up in our business? And so Salima, I don't want to say finally, but you really figured out how you wanted to show up when, I don't know you'd have to tell the story. I don't know how you came with it, but I just remember when you said, Danielle Leslie, I want to sign up for this course. And I was like, okay. And you told me how much it was. And I was like, okay.
It's more expensive now.
I know, but at the time, I was just like, you want to show up for this course for a business that's bringing in no money. That was my thought. Full disclosure, going to be honest.
Well, because the question was, and it was a very specific question, what is going to be our new business model? Like, we needed a business model and we didn't know what that was. And when we came down to Atlanta, again, we went and we looked at storefronts and it still just didn't feel right. But talking about getting quiet, when we were here, a part of my spiritual work was I went to the altar every single day. Every single day I went to my altar and I did my spiritual practice, just like prayers, affirmations, reading, all of the things. And I would allow today's instructions, because that's all I had the capacity for. What are today's instructions? What do I do today? And sometimes it was go to that yoga class, which was so great. It doesn't always make linear sense. It was go to that yoga class. Sometimes it was study astrology. Sometimes it was formulate, just different instructions. And in that container, because this was a year of just go to the altar and do the next thing. Sometimes it was work on the new website because we had some blends that I had been formulating. And then in that year, that's when I started seeing Danielle Leslie's. She's a course creator who we could put her course in the chat, but this was a while ago. I was one of her first, not first students, but within I think it's like 10,000 people in the program at this point. But I was like 700 and something.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when I started seeing Danielle Leslie's ads for her course from scratch program. And I did not immediately sign up, but I checked it out and I was like, this is interesting. And I think we sat with it. I sat with it for about 4 months before realizing, like, I think this is the thing. And then what made me be certain around this being the model to pursue was I had also put up classes on Skillshare.
Mm-hmm.
And they had done really well on Skillshare until Skillshare changed their terms of services and didn't want to do health and wellness anymore. But they had done really well on Skillshare. But the thing about Skillshare was you put in all of this work to record a class. At the time, this was really the early time of like course creators. So it was like short 20-minute classes, 30-minute classes, not these long classes. And when we got that first payment for all of that work, y'all, it was $10. And it's like, how? How? I'm like, the math, even when you see the enrollment in the class has gotten up to the thousands. And the payment was $10. You gotta be kidding me. And it was around that time of like watching Danielle Leslie's webinar. She's saying all the things that I am feeling. And that's when I presented it to Tammy, like, this is our new business model, which is essentially like learn how to be an online like educator.
So let's just take a second here, everybody. And I just want everyone to try and put themselves in this situation in which you know that your partner or yourself, you've put all this energy into creating a course, right? You put same amount of time, doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It takes you the same amount of time to put a course together. So she put the course together. Fantastic. So proud of you. Yay. Get the first check. $10. Then she comes to me and says,
I want to spend $2,000.
I want to spend $2,000.
Yeah.
To build a course she's already built, right? It's going to be a different course, but you've already built the course. So I'm saying you built the course. It's going to take the same amount of time, if not more, and you only made $10 off of that course. Why are we going to spend $2,000 for you to learn to do what you've already done? That was my mindset.
But what you're learning was not I knew the course creation part. What I didn't know was the marketing part.
Right.
For this new business model. And that was the heart of the program that we learned. That's like, if you don't have a marketing plan, and we knew this with our manufacturing business, but we did not know what that looked like for education, for online education. What does that marketing plan look like?
Right.
And that's the skill set that we need to learn, because you don't have a business if you don't know how to market, period. Because you don't have customers and you don't have a way to capture them or to retain them or to communicate with them. So that was the heart of why I was proposing this.
And I said, and it was,
and we sat with it. And I was like, I really think that this is it.
You did. And those are the moments that I was like, I know Salima, and I know that if she says she wants to do something, she doesn't just go 10%, 5%. Right. Like she goes 1,000%, 100%, whatever percentage is like the highest.
That's just 100.
It's only 100. It can't be 1,000 anyway. And so those are those moments where you weep and you have hope, and you did it.
And that became our business model.
But the first weekend of her launch, and I say your launch because Salima I did nothing in building that course. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I had it still at this time. I had a 9-to-5. That was pretty stressful.
Where were you? This is 2018.
Able.
Oh, okay.
I
liked it, but yeah.
I had a 9-to-5 that was pretty stressful. We had Niles, and Salima built
Herbal Medicine for the Soul.
Herbal Medicine for the Soul. She built that all on her own. She did an amazing job, and launch weekend,
we had 7 students.
7 students.
First cohort.
Made her $2,000 back, then some. And so then we were off. So then Selena says, we're in education. And I was like, what does that mean? I don't understand. I'm a type of person, I need to see it out in life to believe it. And I had never seen
totally Capricorn rising.
I had never seen this model before.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you could be highly successful in this field. I didn't even know it was a field. I had no idea about it. And so because
all of the herbalists that we saw, everyone had a brick and mortar. Like that was the most common path. You had a brick and mortar, or you involved in some other kind of herbal school, or maybe after a while you had a book, but we had never seen online education for herbalists before.
Right. So I was just like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And so you built that course. And then the pandemic hit.
Well, right? Yeah, it was 2018. The pandemic's in 2020. So that continued to be like the heart of our model is now education, and we're fully like in that. Yeah. But we still had a product line because like I had launched the immunity syrup at one point, and mostly like the Spellman community, they were gobbling up our immunity syrup. Do you remember that? Like when we first launched it? And this was before the pandemic. We first launched our immunity syrup, and I put it in the Spellman Moms group, and just the orders came flying in.
I don't remember.
You don't remember that? Oh my goodness! Sanitizing so many jars, just trying to our damnedest to get them out quickly. So we had also launched with like our line of like ingestibles, so teas and tinctures, and syrups, which gradually began to grow into the line that we offer now, in addition to some bulk herbs.
And also,
so it was still a hybrid, but not fully. We're very specific about like the percentage of our business model that is manufacturing.
Yes.
It is predominantly education.
I would also like to interject that I was not on board for the ingestibles.
She was so scared.
I was not on board for the ingestibles at all. She got me with the education. Okay, I'm on it. But the ingestibles, that was a lot of back and forth, because it felt like a lot of, it felt scary. I'm like, people are taking this into their bodies. It felt like a lot of liability to me.
And that's what they have insurance for.
Right, but I mean,
which we have.
You have to.
But a part of it too was like we had been asking business questions to mentors, and they weren't willing to answer them. So that was also a part of the fear of like, we're asking questions and this is why we do this.
This is why we do this.
This is why we do this. I'm just put that out there. We're asking the questions. People are not willing to answer them. And so that does make these decisions feel more scary. And then even when you're talking to other business owners or other entrepreneurs, because we had those connections from winning the business plan competition, they didn't know our industry. So they really could not fully answer our questions because It's not food. It's not fully health. It's like this really strange kind of gray area. So we had to learn all of these things and overcome these fears without that level of mentorship that we offer to our community.
Right. And that is why we do it, because it makes it the unknown. Yeah. So if there's someone that's a few steps ahead of you, that could be like, yeah, this was fine, or this fucked, or don't do that. Mm-hmm. I mean, we would have liked it. So hopefully some of y'all find this helpful. But yeah, I was not on board for the ingestibles. I didn't want to do the ingestibles at all.
And then to that, well, we did, but like to that, when we were brand new, like when we were still in Brooklyn and we were looking up the insurance policies for a brand new business, we're doing the body care and we'd had ingestible medicine, like we had syrups, like we had the formulations for it. But in that initial decision of what do we launch with, the insurance as a brand new business, they wanted $5,000. And we remember we had a conversation with the insurance agent too. We were like, So what do new companies do? They just, I had to say it for him to agree. I was like, they just launched their product, and when they have the capital to do this insurance policy, that's when they get it. And he was like, yeah,
pretty much. We're like that.
But now, as a seasoned business owner, we've had time. We're over 10 years, like into having a like formality in business. When we went back to insurance companies, then the price was significantly less. Then it actually goes down. The better, like,
well,
if
yeah,
you have no claims, then
it goes
down.
And so that did help.
That helped a
with
lot.
The giving some protection.
Yeah.
Putting a buffer between
you and your personal assets.
Yeah. And so so that I vaguely remember you doing the immunity syrup. I vaguely remember people coming to the house and picking it up. A lot of things happen out of our house.
That's where you need to start to keep costs as low as possible. We did reach that place where we grew out of the house, and we were looking at spaces again, January, looking at spaces again.
But we didn't fully grow out of the house. So we grew out of the house, but we kept moving before we had to move out of the house. So you fast forward, this is like the beginning of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. The beginning of the pandemic, where I worked was based in New York. And so we were one of the first to essentially be like, your pay is cut in half. I think we found out on a Friday that our pay was cut in half, effective immediately. And it was like, God, again, what are we gonna do? This is insane. And so at this time, I wasn't really involved in the business. Lima was doing basically everything for the business. But since I now had time, and it was kind of like, well, now where do I had to figure out where do I fit in to the business that we started? Mm-hmm. Because the business that we started in name still exists, but in activity is
very different,
completely different. Yeah. And I had a really hard time understanding where I fit in. With that said, didn't last very long, because I realized your strengths and my strengths. And when I went in to see like the organization, I didn't see it. I was like, how do you find anything in here? Like, we had our pantry was stocked with herbs, and it was just kind of like in bins, like there was no order. And so that helped me understand where I fit back into our business. And I was like, oh, I bring systems, I bring order into this. And so the next step in this journey was I redid half of our garage and moved everything out, and we moved it into the garage, and I had a whole setup.
We had a shop.
We had a shop in our essentially garage. In our garage, in half of our garage, to pack herb kits, because with herbal medicine for the soul, you get an herb kit, and it was 45 herbs in the herb kit that gets
individually
hand packed. So finding efficiencies there, organizing. We also had orders that had to get shipped. So we had all of that. So we had moved out of the house and half of the garage. Mm-hmm. And that worked for a little while, but when the pandemic hit.
And we had started, do you remember, we had started getting signs. So it was talking about like that, just the spiritual aspects of when to make decisions too. But I don't remember what they were now, but there were about 3 signs that it was like, you all need to get out of your house.
I can tell you one of them. I remember one of them. So we were shipping at this point, because we'd have to ship herb kits, we'd have to ship products, and the UPS driver would come to our house, and I would stack all the boxes at our front door for him to come and take them. Well, he used to complain to me about having to come to a residential area to pick up boxes. And I'm thinking, dude, this is your job. Like, you pick up boxes. That's the job. when I realized it was a problem was we had another UPS driver come, and she was like, oh yeah, that dude complains to everybody about coming to your house to pick up products, like to pick up packages, because there's so many packages for a residential area. And so that was one like ding, ding, ding that I was like, oh my gosh, she's like complaining to maybe like his managers. He's complaining high up about what we're doing. And there's already,
I think I had a dream.
Maybe you had a dream. There was already some trepidation about the level that we were growing and still being in our house. There absolutely was some like, we can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
Like this isn't going to work. And so that's when we started, we went out and we were looking for a location. Like we need a location.
We need to get the business out of the house.
Yeah, we had hit that point where we said we had to get out of the house. And what also happened at this point, because I had been kind of like straddling, like I still had to work, but I didn't have to work as much as I was working before. So I was doing a lot more Iwilla work, but things started opening up more because again, we were in New York and my company got like this special exemption so that they could come back online during the pandemic. That's where
they wanted you back.
I had to go back full, like I needed my time back. And so that's where like the push of the leap comes in that we were talking about earlier. I had to make a decision. I had to make the decision if I was going to essentially like step back out of Iwilla and go back full time, or if I was going to leave full time and go with Iwilla. And so at that time, everything was pointing to go to Iwilla. Things just, you don't really realize it in the moment. You don't realize it when it happens. It felt like a little overwhelming for me, but things were just falling into place with such ease that the decision, any other decision seems ridiculous. Right. So we went out on like a Saturday. We went on a Saturday around the area looking at empty commercial space. Yeah. We went out on a Saturday and a Sunday, right?
Yeah, it was the weekend. Yeah.
We saw the place, our current location. We called. I think we came to look at it on like a Monday or a Tuesday. We put in an application, and
our lease starts February 1.
And our lease started February 1. And so
we felt it, like looking out the door before we could get in, because there were actually a couple of units that were empty along the time. So we just kind of walked. The building wasn't open, so we just walked, and it was like no. And then when we got to this door, and we actually have two entrances, got to this door, we were like, I think getting that feeling. I think this is it. And then we called our realtor to call them, and yeah. And then once we walked in, we were like, we both knew.
We both knew, but again, it's a big space.
It is
like we're in 3,000 square feet. This is a really good sized space. And so the stretch was...
Got another customer.
The stretch was, can the business support essentially 2 households? Right. And that's the question when you're moving into a brick and mortar, is what you're asking yourself, because you have your personal household and now your business household. And can the business support both of those endeavors? And this is a large space. And then the question also was, are we going to use all the space? Because when you're moving into a brick and mortar, you also have to think outside of, I didn't know this when we first started, but you build it out. And so I don't know why I didn't know it. You don't know what you don't know, right? So you have to build it out, not in terms of, I mean, you could put up walls and stuff. We didn't have to, but you have to buy furniture. You have to go get your business license. You have to get inspected by the health department, right? There is a lot of upfront cost, that there's a lot of money you have to shell out when you move into a brick and mortar space. And so when you move into a space that's 3,000 square feet and you've got to fill up the space, it can be a little daunting. But again, things were just like falling into line. And so at that time, when I was making the decision to leave, this is where the being pushed or leap comes from. I was very intentional about how I left my then job. I wanted to ensure that I was not leaving in a way of running away from something. I was very adamant that I was done with this chapter and I was stepping into a new chapter. I have nothing but love for my old employer. I think they were fantastic. We left on super great terms. I was very adamant about saying, I am done with this and I am stepping into this new chapter, and energetically knowing what that feels like, because there have been other periods. So like back to the beginning of our story, when I first left, that was more of a running. That was more of a, I'm sick of this. I'm done with this. This is very stressful. And I'm naively going to move to entrepreneurship thinking this is going to be less stressful. And I'm going to be, essentially living the dream, right? That's not how it works. That's not how it worked for us. And so knowing that energy and how that transition happened, I knew I didn't want to have that same energy going forward. And so when I left my last employer, it was very much a stepping into this new adventure, essentially, of Iwilla Remedy with a brick and mortar space and what that means. Yeah. And I didn't know what it meant. I don't know if you know what it meant, but I was just telling them I didn't really realize what was. And I think before I say that, I think the naivete in sometimes is really helpful in situations, because otherwise you might not do it, because there's so much stacked in your head against you that you're like, why would I do this? So I do think sometimes that naivete is really helpful in stepping into new situations and new adventures. Because I was saying, I didn't know what was involved with having a brick and mortar and essentially asking your business to be able to handle 2 households. Yeah. Right? That's your utilities, 2 sets of utilities, 2 sets of internet, 2 sets of
everything. And then we needed another car.
And then we needed another car.
Because we were a 1-car family for a while from living in New York.
Right. And so you don't really know what you know until you
realize it.
You know.
And hopefully you don't realize it when it's like too late and you can't adjust. But I do think I always approached this as our canvas. I think that we had ideas of like, we could turn the area that we're in, we could make this the shop. It could be retail. We have classes out there. We have our apothecary, which is really like where all of the herbal action takes place in terms of packing up orders, making the formulas. And then we have the commercial kitchen, which we kind of had to build out. But in that, we still discovered the aspects of like, how do we want to shape our business, where this is our YouTube studio, because we are primarily education. So once we kind of realized what we didn't want to do and knowing what retail really involves, I think that has helped us frame our decisions, because where you put your time is where you're saying that this is how you want your business to grow. And so the way our life is oriented, we didn't want a full retail like shop, like come in, like, basically being open during this amount of time. Someone's always going to be here. And then having to do that constant like inventory, like whatever it is. We didn't want to do that.
Yeah, we do.
Right? We do a little bit of it, but we learned how to manage it on our own. Our hours are very unique. Our business is structured based on how we live our schedule. It is not based on what people expect from a retail shop. That's why we didn't really open our doors to the public until last January.
But hold on one second. So if we could just drill in on that a little bit, because I think that might be helpful to somebody listening, because it was helpful when you said it to me, that it gave the freedom of your business.
Yeah.
Right. And understanding how you want your business to function and how you want to show up in your business. I come from a corporate environment. And so when I approached our business, it was very corporate. It was very corporate in terms of, no, you have hours and you do this, you do that, even though it was in direct opposition to what I actually wanted. But having to unlearn
like, this is ours.
All of those things. And, you know, Salima telling me over and over and over, this is ours. We get to decide. We get to decide how we structure it. It was freeing, but it also was a little like, are you sure? Can we really do that? Is it really going to be
give
successful?
Yourself permission.
But that permission, and again, because I am how I am, I need something. I need to see that someone else has done it. And there was that shop in New York, that Domus, and they closed for like the summer.
2 weeks out of the year for sure, at the top of the year, and then also sometime in the summer. Fully closed.
Fully closed. They had a brick and mortar, fully closed, to go travel the world to find like new products and new things. And so I was like, oh my gosh, it can be done. And that was really freeing. But I think you have to give yourself the permission, at the very least, if you can't step into it fully, to allow yourself to step into it in your imagination of like, what could this be? And is that what I want? And how could it look? I think that was really helpful when we moved into a brick and mortar, because when you're working out of your house,
there's limitations to that.
There's limitations, but there's also freedom. You also can get up if you can't sleep at 3 a.m. and go knock some stuff out, right? But when you move into a brick and mortar, for me at least, it felt not necessarily true, but it felt real. It felt like a business. It felt like, okay,
there's some legitimacy.
There's some legitimacy here. And with that legitimacy, there's a certain expectation of how you're to show up. And I had a hard time divorcing that mindset in terms of what I want and what I have
been conditioned to think.
And, you know, essentially my entire professional career, how it's been set up.
Right. I mean, I would say it's taken us, we're going to the 5th year. Are we in the 5th year? We're in the 5th year, I think, we are in the 5th year of our lease. And so
really?
Yeah. So it's 3-year terms, 3-year.
Oh, right. You signed a 3-year
contracts. Lease. And those first 3 years, I think we both felt like a lot of like, well, they went by super fast, but a lot of like guilt that we weren't using the space in the way that we had thought we should or would. And so we wanted to do like these classes. We do, but like thinking that the model again would be all of these in-person classes. Come here every week, learn herbalism, make medicine with us. We did a little bit, like we do a little bit of that. But the way that we built the current foundation of our business model is online education. And then we didn't turn this into like a retail area. So for a while, it kind of felt unused. We have our other office space where we would have class. It kind of turned into like Niles's office at this point. And then we have the apothecary, and then we have the kitchen and storage. And so it felt like we're not using our space. Do we need this much space? Especially coming from Brooklyn, 713 square feet.
You did a lot.
Do we need this much space? Do we deserve this much space?
Yeah, there was a lot of guilt
all
to
of the
work
space, and it's like, enjoy the space. Like we wanted a spacious space, and we have it. And I think it took us that because we could have decided to look at another space when our lease was up, but it just did not. Going back to those feelings and those spiritual messages, like it just didn't feel complete. It did not feel like our time here was complete and was done, I was like, it's still a canvas and we're still figuring out how we're going to paint this canvas.
It's also
in this room.
I know it's our YouTube studio now, which is great. But also when, it comes time to renew your lease and you can move to another space, there's so
much to consider.
There's also that other consideration of thinking of, we had to build some of this out in order to be compliant. Like we had to build a commercial kitchen in order to be compliant. So when you think about those upfront costs, I'm going to have to pack everything up. I'm going to have to move everything. And so those are also questions that you have to ask yourself if it makes sense. And I think the bigger question, and you had talked about this, was where would that be coming from? Why would we be moving to a smaller space? And moving to a smaller space, and it goes back to energetically, like this emotion of like really feeling guilty. Yeah. Really feeling guilty about how much space we have.
Especially because people don't understand when they walk in our doors, whether that's family or sometimes customers, they don't really get it. And that part just has to be okay.
And we had to because here's some more transparency for y'all. Because I would say 90% of our business is online. So we have students from all over the world. We've been super blessed that we have students from all over the world. And we connect with people online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so when you come in to our space, which is a large space, it's rare if you see a lot of people in here. So of course you're going to see us and you're going to see the people that work with us. But this is not like a bustling shop. And so I know for me, when you're setting up when you are putting into action what you want to see in the world, and people come in and you see the fear in their eyes of like, there's no one in here. Are you all okay? What's going on? Why aren't there more people in here? Like you have to work through that. Like you have to hold true to your vision and be like, no, I know why we're doing this. I know why we're set up the way we're set up. I know that we use everything in here. And I also know that as an herbalist, how much space you could use if you had it, right? Yeah. So yes, we could make it work in half a garage. We could make it work in a 700 square foot in Brooklyn. But when you get to a point where you stop negotiating, you say you don't have to like make these things work, right? And you can spread out and things can have their own home. I think one has to be prepared, and no one prepared us for this because I don't know anyone else that has really done this in this way. There was nothing that could prepare me for the level of anxiety and worry and guilt that came up with having a brick and mortar space in the way we wanted it.
Yeah. And always we don't have to explain, but it ends up being that we need to explain why people perceive it to be empty. It's like, we have a different business model. So this is our headquarters more than it is a brick and mortar space. This is where we go to work. And sometimes y'all come too in person. But for the most part, our business model is online. Right. And like constantly kind of like having to explain that and reinforce that to people. It's like, you don't have to project your worry or your concern because we know our business model.
I know. But you have to get to the point of knowing your business model and being like, okay, this is what we're doing. Yeah. And then, you have days like today. Like people, I know. Like we have so many people coming in. Great. Which is great also, right? We love it when people come in and we chat and
we help and we serve and support. But even in our Google Business profile, we emphasize herbal education. So it's like this little bit of shop, but it's herbal education. So if you are coming in here, you will get custom and like personalized support. And I think that the people appreciate, I think people who come in, they appreciate that. But sometimes that kind of like expectation, like, what is this?
We can get that a lot.
It's a little glitch.
There is a little glitch. But then they're like, oh, this is
like, it's really nice.
It's
like,
really nice in here. It's really great. And I also have to say that I feel because of the way we have it set up, people are very open about about whatever is going on with them. And we can have really open, honest conversations, and people can really walk out of here with what they need. And that feels really good.
Yeah.
And it feels really good to focus on the aspects of the business that truly bring you joy. That when you get up in the morning, and I don't know, someone on this call has had to have that experience of the Sunday night blues of being like, oh, I got to go into the office on Monday, or I have to go here on Monday. And, when it comes to coming in here on Monday, or Sunday, because we're here, we're really excited. I mean, even Sundays, like, we get really excited to show up for these lives. Every week. We get really excited for education. We get really excited for cheerleading and supporting people. We get really excited for sharing our stories with people. Again, like we said before, because we didn't have this. We didn't have someone we could ask these questions to. We didn't know of someone, if they did exist. We didn't know of someone that could answer these questions. And so we like to be as transparent as we can with y'all to help you on your journey. If this is something that you want to do, to give you more of the behind the scenes of like, this is our behind the scenes, but this is what it's like. Like, yeah, there are times that it's great. There are times that, we're so happy that we made the leap. And there are times that it's not that you're not happy you made the leap, but you realize how much work you're doing. I mean, there are times that we're working 7 days a week.
Yeah, like all of February for me, because they're speaking engagements. But yeah, overall, very fulfilling.
And I think this is a lot of times why people say you have to love what you're doing, because it's not always delightful to show up and work 7 days a week. But when you come in and you get to really do something that lights you up, it makes all the difference, and especially when you see that you've helped somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we summarize it? When to make the leap? Because we ended up like talking so much about our story and our different decisions, and kind of had a meandering kind of conversation.
It was a little meandering. We appreciate y'all staying with us. I know it was a little all over the place today. We had a lot going on.
And if you have questions in the chat, whether you're in IG, head to YouTube, or on YouTube, if you have any questions in the chat or just things you want to hear more about, feel free to let us know. The Virtual Herbalism Conference, the opening ceremony is starting right now at 1:00. So we want to make sure that we hopped on earlier on our live so that folks could have an opportunity to sign up for that free conference. This is easily the biggest virtual herbalism conference of the year. So it's free. The opening ceremony is starting right now. And for the next 6 days, you will be able to hear from some like global herbal experts, including yours truly.
And we popped the link.
In the chat.
On YouTube. So y'all, if you haven't signed up, you can click it and sign up and head over there. When do you know what day you're
I think my day's on Tuesday, but you can watch it for free all week. There is an opportunity to get the VIP pass if you do want to get the recordings. But I have had conversations probably with learn from a third of the teachers that are in this conference. And I know the ones that I would really recommend. People are always trying to think about my herbal journey. How do I deepen into my studies? And when I've done conferences like this and been the host and had the opportunity to interview folks, they always really felt like really great master classes. So I would definitely encourage you to sign up for the Virtual Herbalism Conference. The link is in our bio. The link is in the chat. It's completely free if you want to get the replays and have forever access. But take advantage. Just watch them while you're at work, have them in your ear, and you can learn so much.
Right.
But yeah, in terms of making the leap.
It's gonna sound, I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
And you feel it. When it's not that it's not gonna be scary, it's not that you're not gonna have doubts, but there is this inner push or pull to go in that direction. And 9 times out of 10, it has nothing to do with your bank account. It has nothing to do with the current success of the business, although that is very helpful if there is some income coming in from the business or coming in from something. But I think when it comes to making a leap like this, the best advice I could give anybody would ensure that you are stepping in to your next adventure and not running from your current situation. That would probably be my best advice of your marker of, am I ready to do this?
Mm-hmm. But in terms of nuts and bolts, yes, validate your offer. Make sure you actually have proven that you have a product, service, or solution that people are willing to pay for. And then you heard within our story so much we talked about like figuring out our business model. We had a plan. We had a business plan. We won a competition with a business plan, with a pitch competition. That be open enough to allow that to kind of like change and morph. I think the way that I see our journey is that when we started, we were kind of like on the edges of our bullseye and we were moving our way towards the center. I think some people know, like right off the bat, like I want a big herbal business. I want to be in stores. I want to do this, do this, do this. It's okay if you don't. It's okay if you don't. Like you'll learn and discover and just allow yourself to shapeshift along the way. And there's lots of different business plans that you can try on in this work. I think we talked about that in our 2025 video, the first live that we did of 2025. I think we did talk about the different kind of business models that exist in the herbal industry space. So if you head back to that live, you can listen to that and hear more nuance around like, what does it look like to do consultations, brick and mortar? You can wholesale, you can write books, you can do digital products. There is a lot of creativity within this space. And so keeping that openness, but also definitely going into this space with a mindset of entrepreneurship, because you are gonna, we're not doctors, right? Where it's like, I go to residency, I can go on Indeed and boom, I can get a job. You've got to create your ecosystem largely from scratch as an herbalist. So going in with the right kind of expectation on that, but allowing the road and the path to open and to reveal your next turn just as it opens up, as you stay on it.
Yeah. And
I think it is nice. I mean, you're so financially or just like data minded. We did have financial conversations. We didn't adhere to them, but we had them and we did a lot of of our own financial tracking and systems and knew what money was coming in, where it was going. We had our numbers call. So we did our numbers live last week. So check that out because you do want to have the conversation about the numbers. What Faith says is completely different than what the spreadsheets say. Right. So keeping that part in mind too, but I do think that that's an important conversation. And that's so much of what people think about, like financially, when is it time for me to make the leap? I'm like, well, have the conversation and you still got to leave room for spirit to move. Yeah. Anything else? What else was in our description that we promised that we would talk about?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, wait. I like to make sure we hit all
the points?
All the points.
Validate your offer.
Those were notes along the way.
Oh, those are notes along the way. Are there any other questions? Are there any specific questions that through our story that we didn't answer? We always want to make sure that we open that up and we get your specific questions answered best we can to help shed light or what have you. And if you don't have a question now, let me drop our email here in the chat. If you think of a question, we can always create a live around it.
Right. But we're enthusiastic about these lives. We like showing up. We hope that you all enjoyed as well. And now go to the virtual Herbalism conference and we'll see you on that Zoom.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.